To what extent was the result genuinely earned through good policy, and how much was simply the public turning away from far-right politics as part of a broader global rejection of Trump-style conservatism like we saw in Canada last week?
Do you think there was a rejection because of Trump?
Donald Trump is toxic in Australian politics, and he should be, because he doesn't represent our values. He is as disapproved of by most coalition voters as he is by voters on the left. And I mean, one thing Donald Trump has done, by the way, he has ended the culture wars in Australia. Because after this election, any person from...
Do you promise? Can you sign this on a piece of paper? No, really, do you promise?
Wait. Do you really think Donald Trump's ended the culture wars in Australia? Big call.
Well, let me finish. Because after the experience of Saturday, any Conservative politician who is perceived, rightly or wrongly, to be engaged with or entertaining the sort of Trump culture war agenda is going to be repudiated by the public. The culture wars, Trump is poison, electoral poison in Australia. He is a no-go zone, and that's one of the learnings that I'm sure the coalition will take from this election.
Will you take that?
Look, I am a proud Conservative, small C Conservative, Burkean Conservative on this panel, always have been. I don't think Donald Trump is a Conservative.
Quite right.
I think he
Absolutely
is
right.
A man elected to a place that doesn't have compulsory preferential voting, who has played into that.
All right.
Our strongest ally, and his whole mantra is to actually tear down the very institutions that have built that. That's very anti-conservative.
Has Trump ended the culture wars in Australia?
Depends whose culture, Patricia, because when we say the culture wars, there's people that... I represent the 9 million Australians who don't live in capital cities, who have very different views, which is why they vote the way they do. And we need to have our views of the world, our values, respected as equally as anyone's, whether it's Rebecca's or inner city suburban seats.
So we will still have arguments about welcome to country?
Well, one of my senators is Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, who has a very strong view about those type of matters. So do we need to be divisive and not inclusive? No. We need to be an inclusive, respectful, diverse country. And the thing that we've seen happen over time is that we can't have a difference of opinion and express that respectfully. We've all got to somehow agree, and that's actually not what a liberal democracy is
Tony
about.
Burke, are the culture wars over?
Oh, I wish that were true. And
Me too.
I hope it's true. Like, the simplicity is every culture war involves being mean to someone. That's what they are. And there will always be someone who thinks there's some political advantage in that. But if to any extent we're going to have less of it, it just means we're a little bit kinder. I think.
Did Trump help you win this election?
I don't... I think
he was helpful, Carl.
No.
He was helpful.
Events, dear boy, events.
We ran on our merits, and I do think Australians don't like the concept of copying things from overseas. There's a lot to be proud of our country, and patriotism is not 100%. Simply an argument about uniforms and flags. It's also an argument about ideas that come from Australia.
Did Trump give the election to Labor, or was it more?
No, he certainly didn't. I mean, this debate concerns me a lot. I mean, Trump is poison in this country for every good reason. And there's no doubt that the way he implemented the tariff policy, the collapse in the share market, as Australians found their super accounts heading south, obviously Trump was a factor, a not insignificant factor that helped the Labor Party and hurt the Liberal Party. But I think it's completely wrong for people to suggest we are another version of Canada. If Trump had not been involved in this debate at all, if he'd not been involved in this campaign, I've got no doubt at all Albanese would still have won, Peter Dutton would still have lost, and the reason for this is there are deep-seated Australian factors at work here.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't pretend and sort of engage in this nonsense that somehow Donald Trump and the impact of Donald Trump is responsible for what happened in this country last weekend. That's wrong. That's an exaggeration. It helps no side of Australian politics for people to say that and think that, because it's misleading.
So do we all agree on the panel?
I really agree with that.
I just want to get some clarity, because we've got more questions. Do you all agree that Donald Trump was not the reason Labor
He
won?
played a role, but again, agreeing with Paul Kelly, he's absolutely right. Like, it was a couple of things that tipped it over, but it was not the reason.
OK,
You're right.
in the audience, how many of you thought Trump was a deciding factor, an influential factor? OK, just a couple of hands, not that many. OK. Well, put your hand up and I just want to hear from a couple of you. Sorry, I do this randomly, guys. I'd like to hear why you do think Labor won. Over here?
We moved from it being about policy to politics to personality, and to that extent it was comparable with what happened in the US. Personality played more of a role in this election than probably any other.
So you think Peter Dutton's personality?
Indeed, his personality went from being neutral or positive to being outwardly negative, and people picked up on that.
OK. Did you observe that in campaigning?
No, well, my local electorate was different.
I mean
as well,
nationally,
but
because you're a minister.
Yeah, no. The national campaign, I think the matching of people's view of Peter Dutton exactly matched their view as policies came out. The moment up until the election, there was no focus on Liberal policies in any really intense way. But when the election hit, instead of all the commentary and consideration being on the government or could we do more or whatever that might be, people wanted to look at Peter Dutton with respect to, well, what does he mean on work from home? What does he mean with nuclear? Who are all these people he wants to sack? Where will other cuts happen? Mm-hmm. What's his history with Medicare? So I do think if you say, well, people's view of Peter Dutton changed, I think that's true, but I think there was a policy attached to every part of that change.
But one of the things, and we saw the polls, and a lot of people joke about the polls, but the trend was the same. Peter Dutton was doing well from a very low base, and we were all a bit surprised in the research business about why that was happening. But what was coming through is that he seemed to be pretty sensible, he seemed to cut through. The government was having some communications problems, so people were thinking that he was performing better than expected. But the only policy that people could associate with Peter Dutton after The Voice was nuclear. The moment that the ill-fated campaign started, I knew, not because working from home was a particularly, problematic policy, but the backflip. No one wants somebody disorganised building a nuclear reactor. And basically, at that moment, all of his credibility and the Dutton curiousness, people were like, no. And there was a whole range of other things that happened. It was just one after another.
Look, you just wanted to respond on Peter Dutton. He was a negative for the campaign.
So, I think Tony was being pretty cute in the answer he gave before, frankly, because let us not pretend that Peter Dutton was not the subject of a very, very vicious character assassination campaign by the Labor Party.
Oh, come on, that's politics. Really, honestly?
That wasn't reciprocated in nearly that measure.
But he saw the ads against Anthony.
But he called Albanese.
And there were.
He called Albanese a liar consistently. He said he was weak.
There was a lot of to and fro, but I think anybody who looked at this election we've just had objectively would say that the savagery and the constancy and the pervasiveness of the attack on Peter Dutton's character and personality from the Labor Party was absolutely off the charts.
All right.
And can I just say on that, Patricia,
briefly,
everyone has praised Dutton's very gracious concession speech. And for me, a person that has sat in the leadership group since 2017, bar a little break, under two Prime Ministers, that was the man that I knew.
Yeah.
And I think he expressed himself
why didn't we see
genuinely
that
in that
then?
moment. And I think it's disappointing we couldn't sort of show everyone who he really, who he is.
I agree with that. I mean, I haven't always seen eye to eye with Peter, as you know, but I know him as a person. He is a good guy.
Absolutely.
He's a good guy and a good Australian.
I just think there's something we often do in politics, which is pretend that people are choosing us the way they vote for a gold logie. They are not simply choosing a personality or who they like. They are electing us to do a job. And there is a sense during a campaign, policy by policy, will you do the job and how will it affect people's lives? And I think the moment we get into this thing of, was someone popular, liked this or that, that stuff can matter at the edges, but ultimately we're being elected to do a job. And I think that's how it gets weighed.
Are you really saying that you didn't do a job on Peter Dutton personally in this campaign? Because if you say that, I don't think anybody will believe you.
I don't think the ads that I saw, and I had one moment during the campaign where I had an hour and I watched the first episode of White Lotus, and
it's good, isn't it?
Yeah. But during that, the ad breaks on it that happened were all Liberal ads, and they were all personal attacks on Anthony. It's the only time I saw the commercials. They were as vicious as ours.
Can I also say, George, the attacks on Peter Dutton don't even come close to the attacks on Julia Gillard that your party made about that were gender-based attacks. And that might have something to do with voters' sense that the Liberal Party and the Coalition aren't great places for women.
Look, I've watched politics a long time and I've seen mud slung across the aisle, that's for sure.